welcome into the Radioactive Paper Cuts podcast. I'm your host, Josh Kennedy. Joining me today is the great Noah King Bates. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I cannot complain. How about yourself?
Wonderful. I got to see Batman in theaters, and it's been a while since I got to see a true to the comics Batman movie, and that's what we're here to talk about. We're going to do a full review of the Batman. So right now, spoilers coming ahead. We're going to do everything there is. Just spoilers are going to be everywhere. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, definitely go see the movie and then come back to us. But initial thoughts. One, definitely a long movie, but I was never bored. How did you feel about the length yourself?
Same, yeah. It reads like watching the Snyder Cut. It's long, but once you're in it, you're in it. You don't realize how much time passes. Or even Far From Home for like in terms of like newer movies.
Yeah, let's place it in the setting. This Gotham, I dug it. It wasn't too different from other versions, but it had some unique qualities. I think in my pitch for the sequel, I was gonna have the Iceberg Lounge be introduced, and lo and behold, it was in this movie. So that was exciting to me because the Iceberg Lounge is kind of an iconic location within the Arkham games. So getting to go at it in the cinematic experience is pretty sweet.
I was gonna say that I like how both of our sequels, which if anyone hasn't listened to the podcast where we talk about the sequels, now that we've actually seen the movie,
we were pretty close, man.
Yeah, I'm saying that both of our sequels are still really good possibilities.
Man, I want to get into so much, dude. There's just so much to talk about. We definitely don't let me forget to talk about Martha Arkham instead of Martha Kane. That was just an iconic call, but we're gonna get to all that. I just don't let me forget. This setting in Gotham was awesome. I liked
always raining. I did love that little thing about it always being wet or like damp and stuff like that, especially for that ending whole flood that happens at the end. I thought the fact that it's just like this precursor, like it's been raining so much that eventually the dams break. I mean, we know Riddler does that, but it was so cool just to see a wet, dark, gritty Gotham. It was almost never daylight until the end, which was a really cool symbol.
Yep, cool stuff. Wayne Manor looked pretty solid. I didn't mind it at all. This updated Batcave, cool enough. Talk about the gadgets. Batmobile, I was a big fan. It was an American muscle car with a jet engine, and it was sick. So how did you feel about some of the Bat tech we got?
I liked the addition of the contacts because it's one thing.
Loved that.
Yeah, I'm always like, how does Batman remember and the contacts were a really cool little way of being like, how does he see everything and not like take pictures and not like he doesn't have a photographic memory, or at least some of the Batman don't. So
yeah, most versions don't, but some versions do. You know how comic books are. But yeah, him letting Catwoman use the contacts at one point, pretty cool move. So just the fact that she was like infiltrating. How did you feel about that relationship throughout this movie here, the Bat and the Cat?
So it leans into my thoughts on Bruce Wayne and why I enjoy his interpretation, which will lead into the relationship, compared to Michael Keaton's. I know everyone loves Michael Keaton's reclusive Bruce Wayne, but I like the fact that this Bruce Wayne is in his first year, so he doesn't understand that he needs to put up this facade.
Yeah, I love rookie Batman. The fact that he made so many mistakes throughout the movie and like some questionable decisions that like, yeah, he's not the ultimate like fighting machine that we see in every other version. Really, this is rookie stuff. So I'm glad they hit on that plenty. I'm excited to see this Batman advance for sure. As far as his relationship with Catwoman,
yeah.
perfect.
So his
I love Kravitz.
Oh yeah, she did phenomenal, and that's what I was getting ready to say. Is like you can tell that he doesn't know how to be the playboy yet. He doesn't know that facade. So his interaction with women, and it's very close to like the old school animated Batman. That Bruce Wayne can be a playboy, but when you put him in front of a pretty girl, when you try to get him to talk to someone like Catwoman, he freezes up. That's when he becomes that like awkward stoic and just stares. And he says one lines and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that. I liked seeing the fact that he hasn't created this persona yet of billionaire philanthropist playboy. So he's still a shy talking to girls. He's a grown man who has like almost the qualities of a teenager.
Yeah, it's almost like this Batman kind of skipped out on the whole growing up thing a little bit, because he went immediately, like, kind of, he made his way through school and stuff, but then training and vengeance and being a recluse. I imagine it was the same thing through his upbringing. So it's just integrating him into an actual society. You can tell that there's some growing pains there, which is a fun addition to the character.
So we talked about the relationship between Catwoman and Batman. What did you think? Because I have a couple of things. What did you think about the relationship of Alfred and Batman in this one?
I want to say, I think I said it in our spoiler-free review, so if you haven't heard that yet, go listen to it. But the three main villains were my favorite version of the villains so far. So it was my favorite Catwoman, my favorite Penguin, and my favorite Riddler for sure.
Yes.
Andy Serkis does not hit my favorite Alfred. He was good. I enjoyed him, but I don't know if you're going to top Michael Caine, personally. So
Michael Caine gives off Alfred voice very, very well.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't like how they weren't cohesive. And I mean, it's early Batman and stuff like that, and there are those times in which they butt heads. But we got the one really good emotional scene after Alfred was in the hospital.
Right.
But until that, it's always Alfred trying to do this, and then Bruce just...
Yeah, Bruce took some digs at Alfred a couple times about not being his dad and stuff. I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are you trying to rebel? You're like a 20-year-old man, and he's just the older guy that helped raise you, trying to help. Like, he was acting childish in certain parts of this movie, and it was kind of weird. But
yeah,
whatever.
To see in a live action Batman, because we never really get, even during like the Batman Begins, which is an origin Batman movie, like even then it's him and Alfred are thick as thieves. Like that's one of the best duos in comic book history.
True that.
Is Alfred and Batman, because they work so well together. Even though Alfred doesn't want Bruce to be doing that, again, he keeps his mouth quiet or he says things at the right time. And in this one, Andy Serkis, he just kind of was there. He did help with the riddles and stuff like that.
I was just going to say, that much I appreciated from Alfred in this movie. One, he was more than willing to hop in and help with the Riddler thing. And then there was a comment at a different point in the movie where he said, I could teach you how to fight, but not how to be with these famous rich people or whatever the exact line was. And I was like, okay, so they're kind of taking pages from the Gotham TV show and how that Alfred kind of taught Bruce how to fight and things like that. I'm like, that's a pretty cool way to start your training as Alfred, who was formerly of the British Army or whatever. And
right.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it enough.
It was interesting to see other people in the Wayne house. That was weird.
Yeah, the random maid. I didn't.
Yeah.
That was odd. I did not see that coming. But, what can you do? It's fine. Other relationships, I guess. Or just overall, how did you feel about Pattinson as Batman?
So again, I thought he plays stoic well, and that even goes back to Twilight. He plays starey, loner, stoic very, very well. And even the times in which he does, the weird thing is, like, you can tell he's acting. You can tell he's, like, doing his best. But they didn't give him enough lines. They didn't give him enough. I felt like he didn't talk enough for me to really understand his Bruce. But that being said, wearing that cowl, he has acted more under that cowl than any of the other Batman. Even that, like, his emotion through the eyes when he's staring at Commissioner Gordon, when he's talking to Riddler, when he is looking at Catwoman, he emotes more in his eyes. And that reminds me so much of Earth 1 Batman, because that's the whole reason that they decided to make you be able to see his eyes, so you can see him fucking up. You can see the terror in his eyes when he falls. And I thought we got so much of that in Robert Pattinson's Batman. So his cowl work and his cowl acting was par none. It was top notch.
Agreed. I really enjoyed Pattinson's Batman. I know a couple people were almost like petitioning this movie because it's the guy from Twilight, and to those people, I say absolutely not. This is, as of right now, in my mythos of the Batman movies, this is my second favorite Batman movie there is. How do you
Yeah,
feel about it?
I I can wholeheartedly say that in terms of my favorite Batman live action movies, it is number one. It is number one. He might not be my favorite Batman, but he has the best Batman movie. And I was getting ready to say something that so to the people, all you people out there who talk about, oh, it's the dude from Twilight. Do you guys remember that Keanu Reeves, Neo, John Wick, is the dude from Bill and Ted's
Bill and
Excellent
Ted's
Adventure?
Excellent Adventure. He was
Do
great.
these people forget that Brendan Fraser, the love of everyone's life, started out as Encino Man?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
just because an actor starts off on something, a bad movie or a fun movie, does not dictate their life. So I went in when I heard that Robert Pattinson was playing Batman. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I said, let's see it. I
I do it
didn't
every
go
time.
right. I didn't go dude from Twilight. I didn't care, and he performed so well.
Yeah,
I
surpassed my expectation. I intentionally didn't set an expectation because I was like, I'm just gonna let him try it out. I want to see how he does as Batman, and I am happy to report that he was fantastic, and I can't wait to see him do further projects.
Yeah, same here. I very much enjoyed everything that he did. It was so good. Well, not everything that he did, but I very much loved his portrayal of Batman and the story that they told. That being said, what did you think about the constant use of red? Did you notice
Um,
that throughout the movie that was the only other really like it was red, blue, and just gray almost.
yeah, I noticed it for sure. I think it kind of draws from like splash pages in comic books. You have like a primary color that's almost like a filter used in that sort of way. So that's kind of how I felt about it. I didn't read into it too much, but there are things to be drawn from it if you really want to dive deep. I'm sure this is all part of Matt Reeves' vision, and he wants you to know. And like the main poster, the first official poster for the Batman was the all red, and like the first look at the Batman costume was red. It's all intentional choices for sure.
Yeah, I know that it's completely intentional, but it was so interesting the fact of it being red and then having the first villain be someone who's known for a color, for known for green, but
Yeah,
to have almost nothing outside of his like. Even then, when we saw him in his mask or his trench coat, it was almost more brown than green sometimes. That I was so it was weird to see it, but I think Matt Reeves pulled it off. Like Matt Reeves gets mad kudos because after I heard after they were like, yeah, Ben Affleck's not directing, Ben Affleck's not starring, and it was going through hell, backstage hell, and then they finally got Matt Reeves. He delivered so well. The way he got everyone to do the part.
I believe everyone's getting taken by surprise for this movie. Like everyone was like looking forward to it in a way, but I don't think anyone was expecting it to go off the way it is. Like the audience score, the Rotten Tomato score, and like everybody's rating this movie really well because it's just a solid comic book movie. Like as soon as I was done, I was like, I think that's my favorite superhero movie to come out in the last decade, and that's including like MCU movies, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I posted on like TikTok with a couple of like big movie and superhero talkers and stuff like that, and they were talking about the people who say that this is a good The Dark Knight is a better comic book movie and this is a better movie, and I kind of hold that I don't hold that same values. This is a phenomenal comic book movie.
I
um
would almost say the opposite. I don't think The Dark
yeah,
Knight's
I
that.
mean, and some people have said the opposite, and for me my big thing is this felt like you were reading a comic. The only issue that I had is some of the pauses, because when you read a comic as a person who reads comics, you sometimes don't take those pauses
Yeah,
It is
that's true.
you're just kind of reading, but the voiceovers, some of the shots and stuff like that, that was comic book. The noir feel to it was comic book. Some of the first Batman comics had that noir feel to it. So,
Hmm.
and The Dark Knight is a really cool James Bond movie that was mainstream that got people talking about superheroes. And no disrespect to The Dark Knight, because it is a phenomenal movie through and through, but I don't consider it a good comic book movie. It is a good mainstream movie to get people to talk about comics.
Uh, I can agree. Like The Dark Knight is still my favorite Batman movie, but yeah, this movie was more comic book. I don't want to say accurate, but more truthful to the source materials, like the deep cut stuff that was throughout this movie, like even the inclusion of the iceberg launch. Or we did eventually get a mention of Hush, which I'm sure you were losing your mind in the theater, and like
I'm so happy.
yeah, just all these like the future of this franchise. I'm gonna be honest. When they go to the insane asylum, I thought one of two things was gonna happen there, and it ended up. So in my spoiler free review, my one word out of context word was Telltale, because they took the storylines like straight from the Telltale Batman game, where it's actually Martha Arkham, and she's part of the Arkham family. She went insane. She spent some time in an asylum. In mainstream comic books, she's Martha Kane, whose brother's, the head of the Crows and things along these lines. But
Yeah, and that's how he's related to Batwoman, because that's his cousin.
yeah, exactly. But in this context, they went to the insane asylum. I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna go Court of Owls? Are they gonna discover the thing? Because in the Court of Owls, they had the whole thing about Bruce Wayne having a brother that was like raised in the asylum. I was like,
Yes.
is this the direction you're going? Did I really call it that well? I was looking for owls everywhere. Actually, I wasn't quite right on that, but maybe they'll lean into that later. But
Yeah, that's how I felt when they brought it. When I heard the last name Elliot
yep,
and I saw Hush on the screen, your boy was like, "Let's go!"
it was interesting because they did make some changes for sure to comic book characters like Tommy Elliott. Well, he wasn't even mentioned. I mean, his dad was a reporter, and in the actual
No,
comics,
that's
he's a
technically
different.
supposed to be his grandfather, though.
Is that what it
That's the
was?
weird
Okay,
thing.
that
Is
makes
that
more
like
sense then.
that was supposed to be his grandfather? His father is a surgeon.
Right,
No, is his father a surgeon?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think his father is a surgeon. Or he's just really close with the Waynes under some circumstances because his
Yeah,
once the car accident happens, he's not a surgeon because Thomas works on the parents after the car crash and he can't do anything and he tells Tommy and Tommy is like mad or something like that. Mad.
yeah,
Air
even though
quotes,
he's the one that cut the brakes.
mad.
Yeah. Um,
What'd you
I
think about the inmate, the infamous scene?
Oh, at the end of the movie, we can talk about that. That is
Oh
the
yeah,
guy that plays. We're just hopping all over. The guy that plays Druig in the Eternals is going to be the Joker in this universe. Is
yeah.
what that seems to be. And from the scene that we saw, obviously it was just a silhouette of his face. He looked like he had some skin problems for
Mm.
sure, and then his hair was spiky and kind of crazy. But I bought it. I mean, I've got nothing like I'm excited to see him play the character in the future for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think him and Dano played off of each other really well in that scene. It
Yeah.
was so intriguing to just to hear the voice and to see Dano like play off of it. I thought that was a really cool thing
The
instead of just
interconnection
having
with the rogues is going to be fun because that's something that is very prevalent in the TV show and the comic books, but it's harder to do within a cinematic universe to kind of build that relationship. So starting right off the bat, like, hey, these two might have some sort of might be in cahoots later on. But speaking of villains, one, I loved the way they treated Falcone and how they took him
yes.
directly from the Telltale game where his life was saved by Thomas Wayne and he is the father of Catwoman in
Hmm.
the origin story with all that stuff. I'm like, I was a big fan of how they handled that character. How'd you feel?
I really liked. I loved. I always love when because Batman deals with the mob a lot, and that's
Yeah,
something that we haven't really gotten. I mean, we had the scene in The Dark Knight with all the mob
and
bosses and stuff like that, but
then
to
begins a little
see
bit.
Falcone, to hear the one that starts with an M, Maroni.
Maroney, yeah.
Yeah, Maroni. To hear the name like that being like the catalyst that started it all was taking down the Maroni family. It's really cool, and it leads into the fact of like the possibility of Huntress. Like there's so much that
Yeah.
can happen when you add the mob into it.
I called it before it happened when he does have the altercation with Catwoman. I'm like, oh, he's gonna get a scratch on his face, and he did, because that's like an iconic look for Falcone. And I was like, they're just doing all the fan service. I love it, and that like it's just so fun. It was an adventure. There was no part of this movie where I was like, man, this is getting boring, or man, they took a different choice. Interesting side note here. The drug that they're taking, they didn't actually the drop. They didn't call it anything, but I'm reading Batman Urban Legends right now, which I actually texted you. You should check it out. It's a Batman and Red Hood storyline all about this drug called Cheer Drops. And it's the same type of thing. So I think they may have drawn this fake drug directly from this graphic novel I'm reading. So it's kind of a cool crossover while it was happening.
Okay. Yeah, I was one like for me, I was trying to think of like all the different like DC drugs that I could think of. I was like, oh snap, could it be like a form of vertigo? Because that was a drug that they used.
No, the way they explain teardrops in that comic book is it's an alteration to Crane's fear toxin, but it has the opposite effect to where you're filled with a sense of euphoria, which is pretty cool. But like people are doing crazy things like thinking they can fly and jumping off roofs and things like that. So that's the main problem with teardrops. So I hope they lean into that even further in future installations, because that's freaking cool.
Yeah, because when you think about it, if teardrops exist, what like that means Scarecrow could be right around the corner.
That's exactly what my thought was. I'm like, man, if they are going to do teardrops, they could definitely connect it with Crane there. Maybe we're just going too deep cut Batman nerd shit, but that's okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I will say that I was kind of upset that they leaned into Joker so early.
Yeah, I felt it was unnecessary.
Yeah,
that scene,
I agree.
I didn't think it needed to happen. Am I upset it happened? No, it's fine, but it didn't seem like a worthy inclusion. It's like it's not technically related to almost anything that happened within this movie. I get that you're setting up like future installations, but I don't know, man. I didn't think it needed to be there, but it's okay.
His rogues gallery is so
deep.
Yeah, that like I don't like, especially in the world that like Matt Reeves has created, which is like super grounded and stuff like that. Which I mean, the Joker can be super grounded, but I'm like, oh man, like there's Doll Man, there's Mr. Pig,
Professor Pig,
there's Professor Pig, there's Zaz, there's like really cool, especially if they're going more in the realm of like these serial killers and like they based Riddler off Zodiac, so it would be cool to see like if they did do Crane doing like the dude who like poisoned all those Tylenol tablets in Chicago.
I wonder how fantastic this franchise is going to lean into things. Like, are we going to someday get a Killer Croc type of like it's almost too fantasy, or like a Ra's al Ghul? Like these all like
if they lean into
figures.
Horror, they could.
Yes, that's true.
They truly make Killer Croc deformed, like he like a real act, like looking into real skin conditions and stuff like that. They could do it, but I also know that like from interviews, Matt Reeves was like possibly thinking about making a really grounded Mr. Freeze, and I would
love that. I Mr. Freeze's backstory is one of the most tragic in all of Batman's Rogues Gallery, and it's so funny because he made his like premiere. He was known as Dr. Zero or something, or Professor Zero, and he showed up in the 1966 Batman TV show. And then he was evolved into Mr. Freeze, and then he was just, whatever, a guy that messes with ice. But then the animated series gave him the background. So this character started as like a one-off stupid person that like they pulled off of comic books to make in the 66 Batman show. And now his backstory with the tragedy of his wife and the accident, all this stuff is like really good. Like it's in any of the video games, if you play through like Cold Heart in Arkham Origins.
Oh, Cold Heart.
Yep, or the boss battle in Arkham Knight, another one, or even Arkham City. Like Mr. Freeze is a fantastic villain that they've only done once, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was dumb. So please do it better.
Yeah, and that's the same thing, I guess. Like, I feel like Matt Reeves is going, which I mean, people love Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito, and I do too, and they did phenomenal for that movie. But I like the fact that he's giving new life into some characters that, like, sadly didn't get the right kind of story. Like, oh, a fun little mental Easter egg that I thought about was the fact of when he shot himself up with adrenaline during the final fight.
Venom.
Yeah, I
It's
was like,
Venom.
ooh, is that
It's
like
Venom.
prototype Venom? Like, I legit was like, ooh, is that prototype Venom? Especially after he did it and he went ape shit.
That was very much intentional. I am 1,000% sure I will put money on it that that's either Venom or an early version of Venom. And that, I believe, is directly stolen from Red Hood comics, because that's actually something that he did himself, where he had a stint where he used Bane's Venom. So that'd be kind of cool if they leaned into that as well. But we haven't talked about Cobblepot yet. How'd you feel about Colin Farrell's Penguin?
I liked it. I thought he was the right level of smarmy and manipulative, and
Sarcastic.
he was the early Penguin, so like he knew that like he was waiting for his chance to strike. And Colin Farrell played off of everyone well. The little scene between Gordon, Batman, and him, he leaned into it, and I loved him for that.
Yeah, no, they laid it up. It's perfectly placed for them to do the Penguin series that they've been talking about on HBO Max. His struggle to take over, they're going to take things from No Man's Land, the comic book. It's a flood instead of it being an earthquake, which it was in the comic books. But
right.
I think that's kind of the route they're going to go. Penguin's going to be taking this opportunity when Gotham's kind of going crazy and parts of it are flooded. He's going to try and take over as much territory as he can and truly become the Penguin mob boss that we know within the Batman universe. So that's very exciting, and I really hope that the show, because I don't think it's confirmed yet, but I really want it to happen.
No, I think Penguin's confirmed. So there's Penguin, there's Gotham PD, and then there's a third one that's supposed to be
Catwoman they're referencing back and forth. That might be what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Penguin, there is the Gotham PD, starring Jeffrey Wright, and then there's been talk of a third one that's supposed to take place around Arkham, which I would love, because then that gives me Arkham Asylum, a Mad World, or a Mad Earth.
Yeah, you referenced that in our DC reading recommendation, so you guys can check that out as well.
So that would be, and that gives us a lot of Joker backstory that we don't have to fill into a movie. Like that's where I'm like, yeah, let's give us a Joker. Stop putting him in the limelight of a movie. Like, he is Batman's greatest foe, but there's so many other foes that I want to see on screen.
Yeah,
I want a better Bane. I want a cooler Mr. Freeze. I want a Poison, especially for this Bruce Wayne. I would love a Poison Ivy. I would love to see him.
Would be sick in this universe, that's for sure. Yeah, if they go an Arkham series, would you rather see it take place now or like a prequel with the building of the asylum? So Amadeus Arkham going insane slightly over time, like it's kind of an Easter egg thing in the Arkham Asylum video game where you take screenshots of all of the spiders all across the map.
And you get the backstory
of Arkham. I don't know if they're going to do it that way or if they'll just start from now and because it seems like Arkham Asylum is established, but it's not as big of a thing as it is yet to become. So
yeah, I would like to. I think a prequel would be cool. I think it would kind of disconnect, but I mean, it depends on what world they're trying to build for Earth 2, this Pattinson Earth, because I would love to see, Hugo Strange. I would love to see. I would truly like if they did
Harley Quinn, dude. You can have a Harley Quinn intro that way. I mean, we love Margot Robbie, but that's in a different universe entirely. So you could have whoever play like an up and coming Harleen Quinzel, and then have the story even revolve around her going slightly insane and talking to the Joker or something like that. That could be fun. Do a mad love storyline.
Yeah, I think a cool Arkham would be almost an anthology type thing, because we have set up like Gotham PD is probably going to be story driven. Penguin's for sure going to be story driven, but I would love almost an anthology of different inmates. That way we can fill out his rogues gallery.
Yeah,
we can fill it with good actors, but they only got to show up for like 2 episodes. They get like their main episode and then like maybe the episode in which everything like revolts.
Yeah, there's so many fun characters that like some of my favorite like C-list characters. I love Mad
Kite
Hatter.
Man.
Kite Man's fun, but I love Mad Hatter. He's fantastic. Calendar Man. I love how his like his murders are gonna happen on holidays, yet no one can stop him. Like that's a fun thing, not for a full movie, but like an episode or two. I'll buy
Oh
into
yeah.
it. Like
Again,
there's
Professor Pig is
yeah,
was creepy ass dude. I
he's
love
creepy.
his like I love his parts in Arkham.
Yep.
Um, and it's I would love to see an episode and so many great people to play Professor Pig. My top name would be like Jack Black or something like that.
Oh, dude, that'd be so sick. They might. I mean, I could see he because the whole idea behind Professor Pig is just an overacting dude. That's his whole thing. Is he sings opera and like makes people look more perfect and make them his dolls and stuff, and it's super creepy. But Jack Black doing a combination of like horror and comedy, like he would be a solid casting. So hey, take note, DC. If you're gonna do
Yeah,
Professor Pig, hit the boy up.
Jack Black. The ventriloquist and like there's so many
Scarface, yeah.
rogues gallery that I would love for them to introduce, and
I want
hopefully
an
we get.
Azrael storyline, dude. Azrael's a really cool character as well.
I think we'll get Easter eggs, or he will be a secondary character in Gotham PD because one
Yeah,
of the Azrael is a police officer, Jean Valley Baptiste
John.
or something.
Yeah, I think John Valley. I think yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
I think he's a cop who goes slightly insane. So that would be cool. That gives
I
us
agree.
yeah.
There's a huge rogues gallery still to be hit, but we this is not to say that we did not enjoy this movie because this movie
That is
itself,
true.
as
So to
it
get
was,
back on track, Dano, we have not talked about Riddler. What was your thoughts on Riddler?
definitely like all loved Jim Carrey because he was very much a part of my childhood playing the Riddler, playing the over the top silly Riddler, but serial killer Riddler reigned supreme because it was cool. So I love how he's younger and he's kind of a social outcast and he's part of this like online community that you find later in the show and it's like he gives off major school shooter vibes and he's like stupid smart and putting together the riddles and stuff. That was my favorite part of this movie. We got to see Detective Batman. We don't get to see that hardly at all. I mean, we saw it a little bit in The Dark Knight with the reconstruction of the bullet and the fingerprint and little bits here and there, but when I think detective, I think switching to detective vision in the Arkham games and scanning the blood and recreating the crime scene, and that's more along the lines of what he did in this.
Yes, and Dano, because I didn't know Dano before this movie,
Me
and
either.
when I saw a picture of him, I was like, all right, I guess, fine, sure. But his ability to switch from childlike insanity to stoic, like that, the interrogation.
He
I
leaned
was
into
on my,
like
I was
he's on the spectrum for sure. Like they leaned into him being at least marginally autistic for sure. Like the fact that he was
yes,
like yelling when things weren't going the way they wanted them to. I'm like, that's an interesting thing to add to that character, and it makes things make a lot of sense and how he's so OCD about everything because that goes along the lines with being on the spectrum. So I was like, good move on their part for sure.
yes, and he leaned into it. He perfected the right level of charisma in the Riddler he presented. Like Jim Carrey's charisma was very much in that world, and
He
it
played
made
Jim
sense.
Carrey with red hair, is what he did. He was just being himself, which was what we needed in that movie,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah,
fun.
that's what we needed at that time, and especially for the people he was playing off of. Now, this like Dano's charisma when he is talking, and he still holds your attention. He might not be loud or boisterous or carry, but he is focused. You want to hear what comes out of his mouth. And I know this is going to sound stupid, but every time I heard the trailer or every time I would like, once we got to the scene where he says, I've been trying to reach you, my brain automatically fills in about your car's extended warranty. But that being said, like, he was menacing. The first scene read
Yo, the
like a horror
murder was
movie.
so dope. Like every one of his murders was pretty gruesome, and the way he killed people was sick. And like the fact that he used the carpet ripper tool to commit a couple of the murders was really smart because you eventually, you realize it reveals the map later. I love how they made it seem like it was the end of the storyline. Riddler's caught. He's not going to do anything at this point, and then Batman goes to the interrogation room. The fact that do you think the Riddler knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne or no?
I think he didn't until he tried to kill Bruce Wayne. I think up until that point, he thought Batman and Bruce Wayne were two separate people.
Yeah,
but when he sent them
in the interrogation, he starts out by saying Bruce Wayne a bunch of times, and you can see Batman's visibly uncomfortable from our angle, but from his, he's just standing in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of comes off of it and just explained why they couldn't get Bruce Wayne. So he doesn't necessarily admit that he knows, but at the same time, it's like, I think like he knows.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's smart enough for sure to like. I feel like when he says we didn't get Bruce, I think for him in that final part, he can finally put two and two together. Oh, we didn't get Bruce because I sent you somewhere else. Like, I feel like that he tested Batman and he outsmarted him to a degree because it was probably a test to figure out who Bruce Wayne was.
Or how he's involved, yeah.
Yeah. Especially with the fact that he was at when the DA busts through. He locks eyes with Bruce.
Yeah, I remember
and then
that.
Shortly after that, Batman appears.
Yeah, he's smart enough to put two and two together. So it's never specifically stated that he knows, but I think a lot of people are under the impression he does, and that's an important part of the Riddler within some Batman storylines. Is he's the only one that knows. I believe they did like a Batman 0 year type of thing back in the New 52 or Riddler year, whatever it was called. There was a big Riddler storyline that they kind of leaned into that quite a bit. So I hope that's the route they're going, and then maybe he tells Joker, or maybe he doesn't tell Joker. I don't know.
Because it seems like they're setting up for what is it called, Joker's War or something like that.
Well, Joker War is the current one. They had a Joker versus Riddler thing. It was called something else. I don't remember what it was. Joker War just happened though, where Joker does find out that it's Bruce Wayne, steals all his money and shit like that. So
yeah, but I know it's like it starts off with doesn't it start off with Joker and Riddler working together, and then they start to kind of, because then it becomes this whole they're fighting each other, and the rogues gallery have to pick sides. Yeah. So it'd be interesting if they work in the Arkham thing, the budding friendship between Joker and Riddler. That way, by the time we get to the third movie, we get a split. Or even if they play up Joker's Wars in the Arkham show.
They may just be leaning in they're trying to get an extension of the Joker throughout the movies, but having him be an overall in the back of your head mind thing, like the way Thanos was within the MCU. So he's there, but he's not there, because in the other two versions, it's a one-off. I mean, in Christopher Nolan's series, they wanted him to come back for the third one, but obviously Heath Ledger passed away and they weren't going to recast the Joker. Right. So they went a different route with that movie. But in this case, I think they're trying to go for longevity here.
Yeah, because there is the deleted scene that everyone's talked about where Bruce goes and talks. There's a conversation between
I want to see that scene. I want to see.
Yeah, because I from what I got from Druid, he had a good voice for Joker. His laugh was meh, but there's time to grow.
It was okay.
Yeah, it's time to grow.
I mean, they can't all be Mark Hamill.
Yeah, no one can be Mark Hamill. But also at the same time, I would love to see how he interacts with his prize, the Batman. Whenever we think about Joker, we always have to remember he is obsessed with Batman, regardless. That's, I think, a huge part on why Jared Leto's Joker doesn't hold up as much. We don't get to see his true obsession. We don't get to see him obsessed with the one thing he wants, which is the Batman.
Yeah, there was lots of mistakes with the original Suicide Squad movie, unfortunately. And I like Jared Leto as an actor, so I think he could have played a decent Joker, but that ship has kind of sailed at this point. He got a little bit of a redemption in the Snyder Cut for a couple minute scene, and that was fine. But Zack
And
Snyder's
now he's
gone
on
from
to
the
Morbius.
DCU.
He's on
Yeah,
to the Sonyverse, so
he's doing other things. He's gonna be fine.
yeah,
But
he's gonna keep acting.
yeah, for real. For Batman though, loved this movie. Can't think of pretty much anything I disliked about it, and like I said, it's gonna forever go down as one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. Did you have
Yeah,
anything else you wanted to hit on?
I love the movie. The one thing that again is an issue for me, but it's not an issue for the movie, if this makes sense, is the amount of silence that sometimes happens in between Batman talking and other people talking, which I understand. Dude dressed up like a bat's not saying stuff. You kind of stare for a second, but at times
Right.
I felt like, and maybe it's just the theater person in me where I'm like, that's so much silence, like that's so much space. But it reads in the movie. It's just as a comic book reader and as a theater person, having that much space seemed weird. But
Yeah,
that's my only gripe.
that's just a rough thing that all comic book movies have to deal with. Is the whole concept of doing comic books is you have like 9 to 12 panels for the reader to read. You have to have a build up and then have it end in a way that you want to turn the page and continue reading. So it's constantly going up and down and up and down and hitting different climaxes throughout the storyline because it's designed to keep the reader engaged with the material. But in a comic book movie, you are allowed to take those beats that you don't necessarily get to do in comic books and just embrace the silence. And like within the context, it does make a little bit of sense. Like you said, the bat suit's kind of weird, but yeah, it's a little nitpicky, but I fully understand. And maybe they'll keep doing. Maybe they'll get better at it, or maybe it's a totally intentional
Yeah,
thing, and they're gonna.
yeah, maybe it's that style, and if it's that style, I'll get used to it. We missed one fucking huge person in the movie and relationship, Gordon. The relationship of
Good
Gordon and Batman. What did you think of Jeffrey Wright's Commissioner Gordon?
point.
Well,
Personally, still like
Lieutenant.
Gary. Yeah, I still like Gary Oldman more so far, but I am willing to give Jeffrey Wright more of a shot. I loved how he doesn't fully trust the Batman. It shows that he's a smart guy and he's not overly trusting, but he also understands that Batman's necessary and he's an asset to the GCPD. And he's willing to literally take a punch and things like that to kind of give Batman an advantage. So that relationship, fantastic. I really liked it. I hope it's gonna keep going in that route because, like we said, he's gonna be the star of the GCPD show. He might even have to deal with repercussions of dealing with Batman. I'm sure he will, and
Oh
the
yeah, the
corrupt
rise to
GCPD.
Commissioner.
Exactly. It's gonna be fun. I'm excited to see it. But Jeffrey Wright, I enjoyed him. I hope he keeps doing it. His voice, he almost did a Batman voice. I noticed that. He has like a gruff, deep voice. I'm like, this is how your voice sounded in other things I've seen you in, but it was a
It
choice.
kind of sounds like that when he's Uatu, but even then, I'd love for him to read as Batman, like for like audiobook. I think he would do a really cool job. I I liked his Commissioner Gordon compared to Gary Oldman and J.K. Simmons was softer, which I think lent itself very well in this movie.
Yeah.
It was almost like a teacher like helping a student type. Like it's like, oh, you're smart, but I'm just here to kind of like help move you along. Like his ability to trust in the Batman only so far is very teacher. It's like I'm gonna give you the tools, I'm gonna help you along, but you gotta prove that you can do this. Like, and
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a tryout. Like he trusts him to a point, but it's like, dude, if you don't show up, like this is my career on the line still. Like, your results directly relate to how my career goes. So you need to understand this is a mutual relationship. You don't just get to use me as access to crime scenes and stuff. We're in a partnership of
partnership,
sorts.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it did read like that to the point where, like, in times in which Batman gave him something or, like, explained something to just him, it did feel like a partnership at times, which I think for year 2 Batman, because this is his second year, I think it read really well. And I can only see their relationship growing better. And yeah, no, the Batgirl involves J.K. Simmons is
Yeah, I'm not upset
Batgirl.
about that. I think it's cool that we're keeping the DCEU alive and well because they do have some pretty sweet characters. But I love how we're getting this Earth 2 storyline as well. And I love how they're not mutually exclusive. You can enjoy all of them as a DC fan, and you don't have to focus on universes so much. And I think that's freeing in a way, because you almost write yourself into a corner if you try and connect too many things. So, worked out.
I really hope that they get fueled by chaos right now. Like, I hope the fact that they have so many things thrown at the wall that they're just able to just
DC's
do
hitting
it. And if it
bangers,
connects
bro.
to another movie, cool. But if it doesn't connect to other ones, fine. Like, their standalone movies or ones that kind of connect but don't are their best ones. The Batman, Joker, the Suicide Squad. Like, if you take their 3 best movies, which I just named them, don't connect to each other at all. But the Suicide Squad connects to other good movies like Shazam.
Connects to, yeah, exactly. It's all good things. Oh, I can't wait to see more Shazam. I totally forgot about that movie because it's been so long since we've seen another one.
They completely left that out. And Black Adam, like, so many good things are getting ready to happen for, I think, DC. And I'm glad that Marvel shot its load fairly quick. Like, they're releasing Multiverse of Madness fairly early in the year. And then we're going to get, like, Flash, Aquaman, Black Adam. Like, I think
it's a good year.
Going to be a good thing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all comic book things. I'm especially excited for DC thing because, you know, I'm a DC boy at heart, and I know Noah shares that sentiment.
Flashpoint.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Radioactive Paper Cuts podcast. We hope you enjoyed this review. We'll be back again next week with some fun stuff. Go check out the movie a second or third time because that's what I'm going to do.
I got to find 3 hours of my life to be able to go back, but I'm going.
Worth it. All right. Thank you, guys.